everyone, it's Tzayla and welcome to Off Key and On Pitch, your backstage pass to the unfiltered world of music. In case you haven't guessed yet, the quality of your music is extremely important. Having a strong brand, great stage presence, and excellent social media engagement, while all of these are also extremely important, they're still secondary to the music itself. It's kind of the center of everything. So how do you get high quality music? Well, first, the songwriting needs to be strong, but that's another episode entirely. But today, we're talking about production, which means having the right tools. In case you guys didn't know, I produce all of my own music. I spent 4 years studying it at Pippin Music Academy and then got a certificate in music production from Berklee College of Music. So today, I'll go over everything I use in my home studio, from hardware to software. And don't worry, I'm not about to rattle off a list of expensive gear that you cannot afford. I'm an artist on a budget too, so most of my setup is cost effective but still delivers professional results. Also, if you're new to music production, I'll explain what each piece of equipment does to the best of my ability so that you can better understand how music gets made. All right, let's get into it. So the first thing I want to go over are DAWs. The DAW stands for Digital Audio Workstation, and it is the backbone of all music production. It's used for multi-track recording, editing, mixing, and mastering, essentially everything related to audio, whether recorded or synthesized, and is seriously probably the most important part of your studio. There are many DAWs out there. I personally use PreSonus Studio One 6, but others include Ableton Live, which is amazing for electronic music and live performance. There's Logic Pro, that's the DAW that Apple has. Mac users love this one. Pro Tools is currently the industry standard for mixing and recording, and there's also FL Studio, which is popular for hip-hop, trap, and electronic music. There's plenty of DAWs out there. There's even a free one called GarageBand if you prefer that. Your DAW choice is highly personal. I personally prefer Studio One because of its smooth workflow, intuitive layout, and well-rounded feature set. It's also the DAW I learned music production on, so I'm a little biased toward it. But if you want to try Studio One, PreSonus offers multiple different tiers with varying price points. But no matter what DAW you choose, all production techniques I'll discuss today are transferable to any software, so just remember that. But also keep in mind that while I said this is for the producer on a budget, I recommend investing some money in your DAW because it's just that important and you want to start with a strong base. The next thing is a microphone. A microphone is one of the most critical tools in your setup. It determines the clarity, warmth, and detail of your recordings, whether you're capturing vocals or acoustic instruments. There are several different types of microphones out there, each suited for different sound recording situations. So there's the dynamic microphones. These are great for live performances and loud sounds like guitar amps or drums. A few examples of this would be the Shure SM58. It's a solid, affordable choice. It's under $100, but I will say it does not compare to a lot of the other microphones out there that are like $150 to $300. I personally started with a Shure SM58, and if you go back and listen through my music, you can definitely see when I transitioned to a more expensive microphone. So while this is an affordable choice, I would recommend getting one a little bit more expensive. And another example of a dynamic microphone, for instance, is the one I'm currently using. It is a Shure SM7B, which is what most people use for podcasting and radio shows and stuff like that. Another type of microphone you can get are condenser microphones. These are the more sensitive ones. They capture a broad frequency range, and they're best for vocals and sound recording. Some examples would be the Audio-Technica AT4040. It's affordable yet professional sounding for vocals and instruments. Another one is the Neumann TLM-103. It's a high-end condenser known for its warmth and clarity. Ribbon microphones is another type of microphone. It's a vintage-style mic that captures a warm, natural sound, often used for instruments and soft vocals. I personally really want a ribbon mic. One example of this would be the Royer R121. It's a legendary ribbon mic used for electric guitars and brass. Shotgun microphones are highly directional, used for field recording and film production. The Sennheiser MKH416 is the industry standard for voiceover and film. Currently, although I am using this Shure mic for my podcast, in my home studio when recording vocals for music, I use a Bluebird SL condenser microphone. It captures a lot of depth and warmth in my voice and instruments, and I really do recommend this mic to you. But in case you're listening to me and you're thinking to yourself, oh, I can just buy a cheaper USB mic off of Amazon. Let me tell you now that USB microphones, although they are convenient, do lack the depth and quality of XLR microphones, and here's why. When a microphone turns real sound into a sound a computer can understand, it essentially converts sound waves into electronic signals by using a diaphragm that vibrates. And when it's hit by sound, it causes a change in electrical current, which mimics the original sound wave and allows the computer to process it as digital data. This is a process called transduction. And a USB microphone is not able to translate as much of this information as an XLR microphone can. And the result with an XLR mic is a much cleaner recording and more for an engineer to work with. So yes, it might be more cost effective to get a USB microphone, but just like with the DAW, it will be worth it in the long run if you invest in a high quality microphone because it will seriously impact your creations. Anyways, since we're not using USB microphones, we will need an audio interface. So this is a device that converts analog sound from your mic or your instrument into digital signals for your DAW. So the sound goes into the microphone, it gets translated in the audio interface, and then it goes into your laptop. An entry-level studio interface for you to use would be the Focusrite Scarlett TI2i2. My bad. Focus Scarlett 2i2. It is one of the most popular beginner interfaces. It has one microphone input. A mid-tier option is the one I use, a PreSonus Studio 24C. I personally love it. It's very high quality and it has two microphone inputs. But if you want something a little bit more high-end, the Universal Audio Apollo Twin is a very great option. It has built-in DSP for premium sound processing, which is really snazzy. But if you're just starting out, a one-input interface is enough. You can always upgrade later if needed. Again, I personally have two microphone inputs in mine, but honestly, I don't use the second input very often. Moving on, your ability to hear your mix accurately is just as important as having a good mic and interface. So if your monitoring setup is not accurate, your mix might sound great in your studio, but terrible everywhere else. So I personally use One Audio Pro 10 headphones. They're around $30. It's affordable and reliable, but you can also get the Audio-Technica ATH M50X, which is a popular industry standard right now with balanced sound. But the Beyerdynamic DT990 Pro is also a great high-end option if you'd like. When it comes to studio monitors, I don't currently use them since I don't have an isolated recording booth. But if you do have an isolated recording booth, the KRK Rocket 5 is a great budget version for your monitors. The Yamaha HS5 is also very good as well. And PreSonus has some great options if you would check those out. I recommend those personally. Pro tip, if you do mix with headphones like I do, try exporting the song to your phone and then going to your car and listening to it on the car speakers, and then try to listen to your mix on as many different speaker types as you possibly can just to make sure it translates well before you finalize a song. Okay, so once your audio is recorded, it's time to shape and enhance it with processing tools. So basically, we just covered hardware, and now we're going to cover software. I'm not going to go too much in depth with every kind of software you can get because there's so many, but I will go into depth in some of the more important ones, starting with an EQ. An EQ is used to adjust the balance of frequencies in your audio. Every sound has a frequency, in case you didn't know that, and sometimes not every frequency is pleasant to the human ear. So an EQ allows you to isolate and adjust certain frequencies within a sound. You can either turn down an unpleasant frequency or enhance another one. You can even compress specific frequencies if they get too loud using a dynamic EQ. Some popular EQ plugins include the FabFilter Pro Q3, which is highly precise and very user-friendly, but I personally just use a stock EQ that comes with Studio One. I found that it is very effective and easy to use. Next is a compressor. In simple terms, a compressor will even out your recording. Basically, if the volume is too low, it'll bring it up, and if it's too high, it'll bring it down, just evening out. Some popular options for compressors are the Waves CLA 76, which is a classic FET compressor, but again, I use the stock compressors in Studio One. I find they work very well, and my favorite one to use is the optical tube compressor. Another type of plugin you can use are effects like reverb, delay, and modulation. My favorite plugin, and the only plugin I've actually spent money on, because again, I mostly use stock plugins, is Brainworks Master Desk by Plugin Alliance. It has such a nice presence and width to my masters. I absolutely love it. I think I got it for $60 on a Black Friday sale. Definitely recommend it. But in terms of plugins, I have found that stock plugins, if you use them correctly, can be just as effective as purchased ones, especially if you're on a budget. I really do suggest exploring your stock plugins. Now, a nice thing to have in your studio is a MIDI controller. I personally would probably die without mine, but it's not technically necessary to have one, especially if you don't really want to spend too much money on your home studio. A MIDI controller allows you to play MIDI instruments on your DAW. I say it's nice to have because you can technically manually draw in your MIDI instrument parts, but it's just painstaking work. I personally use the Alesis V61, but I also have a PreSonus ATOM that was the first piece of hardware I actually ever got, and a KeyStation Mini 32MK3 from M Audio. It's super small and I love it because I can take it with me when I travel. But when it comes to MIDI instruments, again, I mainly use stock instruments that come with Studio One, but I also use Easy Drummer 3 for my MIDI drums, and I got some free instruments off of Spitfire Audio, but unfortunately, Spitfire no longer offers these free instruments, so I can't recommend them to you, which really sucks. But yeah. So, if you have a DAW, a good microphone, an audio interface, headphones or monitors, and basic plugins for EQ, compression, and reverb, you're ready to start producing music. Remember, the best producers are not the ones with the most expensive equipment. They're the ones who know how to use what they have. So even if you're in a budgeted studio like I am, you can still make high-quality music. If you'd like a list of links and prices of all the equipment I just talked about, shoot me a DM at tzayla.official, include your email, and I'll send it over to you. I'll even add some other recommendations in that list as well. If you found this episode helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your fellow music nerds. More deep dives into music production, songwriting, and industry insights are on the way, so stay tuned. Also, feel free to find me on social media. Check out my music on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you stream your music. And if you have questions, favorite moments, or if there's something I mentioned today that you want me to do a deeper dive on, please comment, DM me, or at tzayla.official. I'd love to hear from you. Keep dreaming big, and I'll see you next time.